What is going on, Jet fans? Matt O'Leary coming to you with another video on this lovely Tuesday afternoon. In today's video, I want to get into a couple New York Jets storylines coming out of the Combine. So it's Combine week, and it's a very exciting time around the NFL because it gets all the GMs in one spot. Yes, it's also fun to look at all the draft prospects and go, ooh, that guy ran really fast at a 40-yard dash in a straight line. Now he's going to rise up draft boards. Like, yes, that is also part of it, but just kind of getting everyone in one spot, like the Super Bowl, and then here, there's like a lot of storylines and a lot of things come out. And today we saw a Jets reporter, Connor Hughes, go on with fellow Jets YouTuber Jake Asman and drop a couple really interesting nuggets for the New York Jets and their offseason in 2024. The first, and I think most important one of the two that stood out, and by the way, you should check out the whole 53-minute interview. It was a really, really good watch, but there were two things to me that he said that really jumped out for the New York Jets. And the first is Bryce Huff's potential market.
Bryce Huff, his future, what are you hearing about his market, and what are you hearing about the Jets' desire to potentially pay that price and keep him?
So I heard from somebody actually who's pretty good with these things, like really, really good with these things. Estimated he'd get around 12 to 14 million on the open market,
which is not nearly as much as what someone said.
No, and in fact, when he told me that, I said Bryce Huff. Like, I thought Bryce was going to be seeing like 20. And if we're talking, look, he's going to get to the point of the legal tampering period, and this weekend, where his agent's going to make calls and find out what his offer is. If his range truly is, because there are concerns with his ability to play the run, his size, blah, blah, blah. If he really is just a 12 to 14 million a year guy, the Jets can find a way to put that under the cap.
Now, if Bryce Huff is going to get somewhere between $12 to $14 million and not $18 million plus, and the Jets still lose him, oh my goodness gracious, you're going to see a very, very annoyed Matt O'Leary on these videos. I am not going to be very, very happy if the New York Jets let Bryce Huff walk for that price. That is very surprising to me. I would not have thought that Bryce Huff would get potentially somewhere to $12 to $14 million. And who knows, maybe he still gets more. That's not to say he is guaranteed to get that, but I've seen in a few places now, this is not the only one, where some are projecting Bryce Huff to be like 15 million, like 15 the cap, essentially Carl Lawson's 3-year, $15 million. The thing is, in the comparison to the Carl Lawson contract and to the Hassan Reddick contract, those were deals that were done 2, 3, 4 years ago. It's been a little bit of a long time now since those deals have come in place, and naturally comes things like inflation. With the cap going up, player salaries continue to go up. So I would, again, this is my just own personal opinion, I would think a player like Bryce Huff could get $18 million a year on AAV. Again, cap hit is totally different than AAV. If this is where it ends up, right? Like legal tampering period Monday, Bryce Huff's agents making the calls, teams are offering him 12 to 14 in that range, $12 to $14 million. Do they go back to the Jets and be like, hey, can you match this? Can you beat this? What can you do? If I'm the Jets, I'm more than comfortable doing that. I'd do the 15, give him the copy paste Carl Lawson contract. Why not? I think it would behoove the Jets to do something like that. It'd be very, very wise to keep Bryce Huff. And if his price is going to be not as high as what we were originally expecting, that's a great sign for the Jets to be able to not only keep him, but also continue to improve the other areas on this football team. The next one is a two-parter, and it has to do with Zach Wilson, because the New York Jets will be moving on from Zach Wilson. So we still have to talk about, his trade value and what's going to happen there until he is no longer on this football team. And unfortunately, with how the news and storylines tend to work around this team, I'm sure we'll have to make some videos after he's gone as well. But Zach Wilson's trade value, not great.
Yeah, Zach probably nothing. I mean,
pick swap day 3.
Like Zach and a 6 for a 5, Zach and something like that. Like that's probably it. I mean, you had your freaking owner came out and said he can't play.
Not really all that surprising when you consider how he's played his first 3 years in the league, what Woody Johnson came out and said during the Super Bowl at the NFL Players or NFL Honors, whatever the hell it's called, and just everything surrounding Zach Wilson's situation. That's really not a surprise that his value could potentially be essentially Zach Wilson in a 6th for a 5th round pick. That's something I think the Jets would have to do. If that's what you're being offered, that sounds about right, and that's something that I think they would do. But that wasn't all that Connor Hughes said. He went on and dropped what I think is a little bit of a hot take for some, and saying that Zach Wilson might have a hard time making a roster in 2024.
My thing with Zach, and I say this over and over again, is like, I have a hard time seeing him on a 53-man roster next year, because you would either have to send him to a team that is committed. Like, so you need to find a team that wants to acquire him. That shrinks your pool. Now you have this pool. You need to find, of that pool, which team is willing to either have Zach as their number 2, which I think shrinks, or is willing to carry 3 quarterbacks, which shrinks it even more. I don't know. Like, Aaron Rodgers was the Jets starting quarterback. He went down, and you saw what happened to the Jets season with Zach Wilson. So what team is going to be willing to carry him as their backup quarterback when you saw what happens with Zach as your backup quarterback last year? 2, how many teams are willing to carry 3 quarterbacks? You know? So, like, I honestly almost feel like he'll be on a roster, like in terms of training camp roster, but I almost think he's going to be on a practice squad somewhere. Like, I really think that's probably what you're looking at with him. And
he brings up an interesting point, right? Because in today's NFL, you have to have, or not that you have to, but it's very rare that teams are carrying that many quarterbacks on a 53-man roster. Some choose to just do 2, some choose to do 3. Now, would there be a team who thinks that maybe they can fix him? Yeah, I don't doubt that. And maybe someone takes a flyer on him for, essentially moving back 35 draft spots. Maybe someone who is willing to take that flyer, and maybe he does make a roster and catches on as a backup quarterback. But it's an interesting point to bring up that, is he going to be one of these teams' backup quarterbacks? We saw what happened, unfortunately, with when the New York Jets turned to him, what happened to their season. Granted, you're going to have some on the other side of the aisle who's going to say, well, the situation was really bad, and Zach played like a backup quarterback, so maybe in a better situation he plays better. Maybe he does. Maybe he does. And that would be the case or argument that a team would actually trade for him and then keep him on that roster. I just thought it was an interesting point that someone who's plugged into the team and someone who, covers the NFL and has for, a decade now, is saying it's not a guarantee that this guy's going to be on a roster in 2024. So we'll see what happens there. But moral of the story, most importantly, Zach Wilson's not going to be on the Jets in 2024. So I would imagine within the next month, Zach Wilson's traded, right? Like, I think before the draft, which is, I guess that's closer to really 2 months away, but I would think in March, maybe early April, we see some movement on Zach Wilson. So this is a situation that could iron itself out over the next few weeks. So let me know what you think on these 2 really big news stories coming out of the NFL Combine, courtesy of the Jake Asman Show and Connor Hughes. Let me know. I'm Matt. Subscribe if you're new. I'll catch you next time.